Okay, we're showing 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get going with the golf section managers meeting. Appreciate you taking the time to join us. Couple housekeeping pieces. Um, Susie, myself, Matt St. Martin, and Doug Hoffman currently are the co-hosts. We're the only ones that really can answer any of the questions um, via the chat. I will answer questions at the end. I'm going to cover my information as well as the others will cover their particular areas of focus, and we can cover those at the end. Otherwise, Matt and Susie will answer questions um, as we go if needed. So if you could stay muted and ask questions in the chat or ask them at the end, that would be great. As far as agenda is concerned, just talking about tournament management, consistencies, expectations that we have for section managers as well as for tournament personnel, and then some communication and deadline pieces that we just need to be aware of, and other logistical items for section tournament for golf. So next one. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Mockentune to cover some website pieces, and then we'll move into Tim Layton with media. Laura?
Great. Thanks, Jason, and good afternoon, everyone. A few things that for many of you are reminders. I see a lot of current and common section managers on this meeting. A reminder that you should have a tournament personnel dashboard on the league website. If you have been a section manager in the past, you should have this all set up. You also need to double check and make sure that you are seeing the correct section events. If you are not seeing the correct section events that you're working with this year, your region secretary is your person to check back with on that. As you get into your region secretary dashboard, you're going to find a button on there that says Section Tournament Management Documents. And Susie, if you'd go ahead one, there you go. I'm sorry, Website Help Guide first. There's one that says Website Help Guide. The Website Help Guide button has a number of one-pagers behind it that will talk you through the things that we're going to ask you to do in the next slides. So again, valuable tools for you at that spot. Now the slide I was expecting, you're going to find a slide that's, or a button that says Spring Tournament Management Documents. That's the spot where Susie, Jason, and others in our office are putting those things for you as a tournament manager. Those are those things that will help you successfully manage that section golf tournament. These aren't things that are necessarily for coaches, ADs, spectators, etc. They're truly those tournament management things. You may share those out with others that are helping you manage that tournament. But when you find that spring tournament management documents and the golf folder inside of that, that's where you'll find all of those assistances for you to manage your tournament. Moving ahead, one of the pieces that you generally want to and need to do is to contact those folks that are participating in your section meet. We currently have on our website showing 3 different directories because we're in transition. Until this spring, we had a school directory and a coach directory. And those 2 let you pull coaches in one spot and ADs in one spot to make a list that would let you email out and start to communicate with your folks. We have now moved and transitioned to a member school directory. And you'll see the button over on the right-hand side. You have access to this. It is new. It is still in beta because it is not 100%, but it's pretty good at this point. This member school directory combines all of the folks in our database in a one stop for you to pull them out. So for example, if you look at those filters, I would expect what many of you would come in and do is move to the position filter and select that you want an AD. In the coach level, you would say, I want a head coach. In the activity filter, you would probably pick both boys and girls golf. In class, you may pick 2A, and in section, you may pick 2. So you've then told it that you want the ADs, the head girls and boys golf coaches in the class and section that you're managing. Applying those filters then gets you a list of whatever that number is, probably about 20 folks, the 10 girls coaches, the 10 boys coaches, and we'll get to 30 with the 10 ADs. So please work with that. The most common problem we're seeing with it right now is that it doesn't load on some slower connections. So if you get that loaded up and you don't see the filters, generally refreshing will do that. Note that you also have an export as CSV button. That will get you that list to download of those folks. That button only appears after you've done your filtering, and then you can pull that list of those folks down. So again, the member school directory should save you some time and make it easier for you to reach out and communicate with the right folks that are participating in your tournament. Moving on, these should look pretty familiar. The 3 things that we ask you to add to the website for different users. On the next slide, the first thing that we ask you to do is to double check the dates and venues for your tournament. Your region secretaries have access to this about a year ago, and generally they have gone in and put dates and venues in for your region section tournament. Please double check their work as things change throughout the course of a year. Where you put this information in, and you'll see that direction sheet down at the bottom, this populates all over the website. Coaches see this information, the public sees this information, ADs have a spot where they see all of their section tournaments for all of their sports. So making sure that this is accurate is very helpful for users. The second thing we ask you to do is to post information for participants. These would be the coaches and the ADs that are participating in your tournament. These may be things on a schedule for the day, a course map, information about where lunch is available, a rain plan for your group. And again, our goal is that coaches and ADs kind of see everything for a single sport in one spot. We post the regular season and the state tournament, and you fill that space for them by adding section tournament resources for them. And again, direction sheet down at the bottom to help you get that information there for those who are participating in your tournament. And then finally, we have fans, spectators, people who want to see your tournament and follow along. There's a spot where you can go in and add a schedule before your tournament and then results after the tournament. Your schedule is likely going to be a one-page document with the name of your section tournament up at the top, where it's located, time, information about parking, the do's and don'ts at that course, anything that might go on that kind of one-pager for that fan or spectator that's going to attend your golf meet. And then following the meet, you're going to take that export out of iWanamaker and add that into this spot, replacing that schedule. Then those folks who want to come back and see how your tournament went, how your meet went, this is where they're going to come to do that. They see this on the golf page, on either the girls or boys golf page underneath that section event, where they can filter down by your section. And then again, before your meet, you should have a schedule posted there. And following your meet, you'll swap that out and put the results there. With that, I'm going to turn it to Tim Layton, who's going to talk a little bit about managing media at your tournaments.
Very good. Thank you, Laura, and welcome to everybody. Good afternoon. It's terrific to see anyone. By the looks of it outside, it looks like we'll be getting some activities in today, and that's a good feeling. This slide today shares information. It's our opportunity to share some pieces as it relates to the management of media at your events. You will have a media presence at your events, but you ask yourself, what do we do with them? How do we manage them? How do we make sure that the right media folks are covering our students. First thing is I'm going to skip down to the media page tools first on this slide, and there is an approved media list on the league's website. If you have any questions or concerns about anybody that may be present at your events and you're not sure if they're approved media member or not, or they come from an approved organization, you can consult that list, which is on the league's media page. You can reach out to me and I can calm your fears, and we'll take it from there. But we just want to make sure that the properly credentialed media folks are indeed there. Now, we want policies at the section level to mirror what happens at the state tournament level. And some of those things as it relates to golf is the in-person interviews. We need to make sure that if anyone's going to be interviewed after, make sure that's done away from the course, away a safe distance away, so that they're not so a media member is not impeding other participants. When it comes to photography, make sure that they're a safe distance away, much like a coach is the only person that can come out on the fairway. That's not true with our media photographers. They need to be a safe distance away. For those of you who have media members who ask for a golf cart at the state meet level, we do not offer that. You may want to consider doing that as well. Streaming. You may have a streaming presence at your events. Please make sure that your region committee, which means your region secretary and the league, they can they jointly make a decision on streaming presence. Make sure that anybody that looks like they're streaming has been approved. That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for serving as administrators for golf. And with that, Jason, back to you.
All right, thanks, Tim and Laura. Just something to touch on for section managers. Just note that many of the features and items that Laura covered on our website also have functionality within the MSHSL Golf app and iWanamaker itself, as far as who's in your tournament, where it's located. All of those tournaments were created in the app already by iWanamaker, so we should be all set there. So just know that you can communicate directly with your participants, spectators, etc., with expectations. You can print out your tee sheets and put those on the league website or other places to share if you desire. So just know that many of those functionalities are also available on the MSHSL Golf app and iWanamaker itself. So some things to note: just make sure that all of the folks that are helping you out with your tournament are aware of what we discuss today. Share any notes as well as the agenda, and these slides and so forth will be available after this particular meeting, as well as a recording, so you can share that with anyone that is working your tournament if you would like them to be aware of what's being discussed. Make sure you have USGA rules book on hand, as well as terms of competition document. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Make sure that you have medical personnel contact information, if they're assigned, have that available on site, or at least have a plan for working through that. Transfer of care documents for participating schools if they have their own trainers and so forth. And then an emergency response protocol for each tournament site. We just need to have something in place for if we have weather emergencies, if we have a person on the golf course that doesn't belong there. How do we evacuate the athletes first? And if we do evacuate them, where do they go? Do they go to houses? Do they go to the clubhouse? Do we go and get them? Those are all things that we need to decide in advance and have outlined and communicated. We instituted a pre-contest administrative and medical timeout with all of our other sports. Many of you are familiar with that. I would say it wouldn't hurt, even in golf, to do that very same thing and meet with your coaches, meet with your site personnel, and go through the the agenda items on the pre-contest administrative medical timeout. That will cover many of the things that are in the emergency response protocol, as well as medical, weather, and just any other logistics that you need everyone on site to know. Certainly, if we have an emergency, a medical emergency, seconds definitely count. And if everyone is left to wonder who's responsible for calling 911, who's responsible for meeting ambulances, AED, etc. If we're not aware of who's responsible for that, that's when we really could have issues. So make sure that you have an emergency response protocol, have a plan, and communicate that with everyone on site. And then finally, make sure you have the updated rules and policies document on hand. We have almost all of the section golf sites and locations and dates and so on, but there are a couple we're still missing, I believe. Or Susie, are we good? We're all good?
I got them all yesterday afternoon.
All right, excellent. So we should be in good shape there. But make sure that the golf site and numbers for tournament managers, et cetera, that you have all that and you provide that to your participants and your leadership team. My contact information is there, work number in the left, cell there in the middle. And then Doug Hoffman, if there's any golf rules related questions, we would expect that that you would contact Doug immediately. Do not call Doug the day after and say, hey, you would never believe the situation that happened at the course, because there's not much that we can do about it at that particular point in time. So that's what Doug's contact information is there for. So next one. Okay. We talked about contacting me and Doug, but first I wanted to talk about just the chain of communication. So at the local site level, they should work together, your rules committee, coaches, MGA officials, et cetera, on site, work together and communicate and try to arrive at a decision. If you are not entirely sure of what to do with that, certainly working with the tournament manager, and I'm assuming in many cases the tournament manager will be on site and can be part of that local site decision-making process. And then if there needs additional feedback or assistance, then region secretary would be next. And then if the region secretary is not able to help you with that situation, then certainly be in touch with me and we can work through whatever the situation is. We need tournament managers to be familiar with rules and policies. And Tim talked about it, about being consistent from section to state. And in many cases, the policies and the rules and the requirements are in fact the same for both. But some cases they may vary, but we would certainly encourage you to be consistent relative to what the state tournament would require. We would hope and assume that at the section level that we would do the same thing. Please confirm all teams that are assigned to your section are planning to participate prior to you putting the tee sheets together. We don't want you to put together those tee sheets and then only to find out that a certain team is going to drop out or one or two players are not going to be there or whatever the case may be. So make sure that you confirm with them before you put all of that together within the MSHSL Golf app and iWanamaker. Next one, Susie. Thank you. So we've all confirmed the sites for our events. That's great. Just note the last date to hold section events is, I believe, is that the correct date, Susie? Is it the 3rd?
Hang on.
I think it's Tuesday, June 3rd. Is that
You
right?
are correct, Jason. It
Okay.
is Tuesday, June 3rd.
Okay, so Just everyone, just so you're aware, last date to hold section events is June 3rd. We certainly encourage you to work with your courses to try to get them in even prior to that, because if we get to weather-related challenges, moving it into Wednesday is really problematic because we need to develop the tee sheets for the state tournament on Wednesday, June 4th, and then we're going to have the qualifiers Zoom on June 4th as well. So I know that courses availability is really challenging and you get these tournaments in when you can, but if possible, try to work to have your event prior to that Tuesday, June 3rd, and June 3rd is the last date. That doesn't mean, a rain date of Wednesday. We need to be done by Tuesday. So try to work with your sites to get in your event prior to that date. If you would like to have an MGA official on site, you would need to contract for them and work with your region secretary on that. And they would work through Doug to see if we could get one assigned. Sometimes there just isn't one available. In which case you certainly would need to work through Doug directly on rules related questions and via text and phone call, as Doug has mentioned. Emails are going to be too late, so make sure that you text or call Doug with those questions. But Doug can help you with assigning an MGA official if that's something that your section and region would look to do. Know that we do contract MGA officials at the state tournament, and they're just a great resource. They know the rules well. And it just provides for a better and smoother experience for your golfers if you have one on site, if possible. So make sure that you connect with Doug directly if you have an interest in having an MGA official on site. Make sure you communicate with your schools and your spectators about your expectations. We don't want any surprises on the day of the event. This is particularly related to spectators. You need to stay out of the fairways. Okay, you need to be out of the way so that players can play through and so on. They need to understand what the cart policy is, knowing that at the state level, we are only going to give carts to those with disability placards on their person, not with an application for one, not they had a heart attack yesterday. That's not how that works. So they need to know that going into state, that's the expectation. And if you have a different expectation or the same, whatever it is, make sure that you communicate that directly with your spectators. And then they need to know that they need to be 25 yards minimum away from the golfers. Only those that have a wristband are allowed to be communicating directly with golfers while they're participating. And so again, all of those are expectations that you need to outline with your spectators, with your participants, with coaches in advance. Be very clear about when your deadline is to submit lineups, rosters, etc. All of those things, just be very clear and communicate that directly with your participants. We talked about the emergency protocols. Just be on top of safety and work with your sites. In many cases, the courses already have emergency action plans already on file. So you can work with them directly on those pieces, but you want to be on top of safety, on top of emergency action plans and communicating that with all participants and knowing that golfers are the priority when it comes to our safety related protocols. If we'll help with others as we can, but ultimately the golfers are our number one priority when it comes to that. Next one. Okay. We haven't really addressed this with golf, but we need to because we've had a couple of instances in the past couple of years that have fallen short of our expectations as it relates to behavior. Sporting and respectful behavior is an absolute requirement and necessity for high school events. This is not a Timberwolves game. We're not gonna yell and scream and go off the handle. So we need to be on top of behavior expectations. Again, this goes back to the previous slide. Behavior expectations need to be communicated with all involved in your tournament. And they need to know that behavior expectations also apply to the participants and the coaches. You need to have a plan, okay? If a coach is violating the wristband expectation and you've had a conversation with them and they continue to flaunt that, they are to be ejected from the course. I know that we don't have ejections in golf all that often, and that's a good thing. But it's not a free-for-all. We're going to follow the expectations or we're going to leave. And so please outline these behavior expectations. Let coaches know that they are also to adhere to these expectations. Follow the rules and policies. We're not coaching on greens. We're not diving into the woods to find balls. All of those are things that have happened in my time overseeing golf. And I believe that in several cases, we did not apply penalties to those that were not meeting the behavior expectations. So, am I anticipating widespread misbehavior? No, I'm not. However, we have had a situation or two every year that did not live up to these expectations, and we need to make it clear to all participants, spectators, that these behavior expectations apply to everyone, and if you don't meet them, you'll be asked to leave the course. Okay? If we do have an issue with a golfer that they have to be ejected from a contest, they do stay on the course under the supervision of an adult. If they choose to leave on their own, that's up to them. All other adults, if they are ejected or asked to leave, they need to leave the premises. So just understand that that's the expectation. Toolkit section for region secretaries and section managers will have this document in addition to behavior expectations that are outlined in rules and policies. All right, next one. All right, from a tournament formatting perspective, we do not dictate to the sections how you format or run your section. There's only two things really that we need or expect as it relates to section formatting. One, it needs to be 36 holes at a minimum. Two, we need to know who your state qualifiers are. That's all we really need and all we dictate. How you run and manage and format it is up to you. So as a region, if your region committee decides that, you know what, only X number of golfers are going to qualify for the section tournament, that's up to you. You guys can determine what that looks like. You know, there's some sections that have brought up the fact that, you know, they don't really want kids that are averaging a 140 to be in the section golf tournament. Well, that's up to you. We're not telling you that they can't. If you determine you do not want that to be part of your tournament, that's up to you. Same with cut lines. The number of day two qualifiers is totally up to the section and the region committee. It varies by section. Some sections will take the top, say, you know, 5 teams and the next 30 individuals, or the top 6 teams and 20 individuals. There's different ways of doing it. Whatever you think is best for your section is certainly fine. At the end of the day, the league just wants to know the winning team and the next 5 individuals from that section. All right, next one. Okay, we've had this come up a few times. It tends to happen a lot more as we get into state tournament time, but we do have this from time to time in section tournaments. So if a player is disqualified for golf rules only, not because they were ejected or because they're academically ineligible, that's a different piece. But if they get disqualified for a golf rule, or they withdraw, which we've had kids leave the competition to go to a band concert. or go to some other event. They can do that. Obviously, their scores are not going to count towards the team's total score, but the DQ withdrawal only applies to that round. So that means they can come back on day two and participate. And if their team qualifies for state, that player would be eligible to move on to the state tournament and participate. And at the state tournament, then that athlete would be eligible for individual honors at that time. And as I mentioned, if they are disqualified or ejected for code of conduct reasons, they would be ineligible for the duration of that event. And the only way they'd be able to come back to participate is if their team qualifies for the state meet. They would be eligible for the second round of the state meet if they were ejected in the section meet. So, okay. Next one. We talked about this earlier. You need to communicate with your participants on certification of roster to the committee. They may be altered up to 30 minutes prior to the first scheduled tee time, or at a time that is stipulated by the section manager and the administrative region. So as a region, if you say, I need your roster by, the day before, you can do that. 30 minutes is the minimum that they need to submit their roster. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to participate if they do not do that. Once they have submitted to the roster to the committee and it's been certified, and you've moved forward with tee sheets and so on, substitutions at that time can only be done, or after that time, can only be done if there is a injury, illness, certified by a physician and so on, or there is a justifiable emergency. So a kid gets in a car accident on the way to the meet, then that would be a justifiable emergency, and you could have a substitution in that case. Going to a band concert in Europe or going to a Twins game is not a justifiable emergency. And a substitution would not be granted in that case. We see that a lot. Again, going from section to the state tournament, where the kid plays in the section tournament and knows they're not going to be around during the state tournament, yet they still certify their score. That is the qualifier for the state meet, and we cannot substitute for that person unless there is a physician statement or an emergency. And again, going to Europe for a trip is not a justifiable emergency. So that team would have to go with 5 at the state meet. Also, if that player is an individual and not on the team, and they're an individual that qualifies for state, yet they know they're not going to be there, once they certify their score, so they've gone through the scores on a Wanamaker and they have certified that their score is accurate, and they have electronically signed their scorecard at that time, they are now the qualifier. So if they do that, go through that process, and they know they're not going to be there, we still can't sub for them. So we're only going to have 4 individuals from that section. So make sure that golfers and coaches understand in your section that if they know that they're going to not be at the state tournament on that last day of the section meet, they should walk right by the scorer's table and go right to the parking lot and head for home. Because at least in that case, the kid who's behind them has a chance to participate in the state tournament. Because again, once they sign or certify their score, they are the qualifier. And we can only substitute them in an emergency or if we have an injury or illness. All right. All right. Next one, Susie. And we talked about this on the previous slide. The way that this works in combined championship sports is the way that I just described. And when you're eligible for individual honors, you're also eligible for team honors. So, Next one. Um, this is very unusual, thankfully. But if you have a student athlete that is ineligible according to bylaw 206, so code of conduct, or they got ejected, they cannot be in uniform. They can if the ejection happened that day, they can be in uniform. But they can't come back and be in uniform, so to speak, at the next day of competition, and they can't participate in award ceremonies if they are ineligible for that reason, and they can't be part of any practice or warm up, so they can't be at the range or on the putting green, etc. They can come and be there and watch. They are allowed to do that, but they wouldn't be able to participate. We had that in our team sports, of course, many times. But just know that if we have any athlete that's ineligible for that reason, they would not be able to participate in the award ceremony. So they don't get a medal, and they would not be able to be in the trophy presentation, even if their team was to go on and win that particular competition. All right, next one. We talked about the terms of competition document. All of these pieces are rules related pieces that are adjustment to USGA rule for the league. And we encourage you to take a look at that document, be very familiar with it. We pulled all of those out of rules and policies now, so that you can find them all in one place. We also have a model local rule sheet available on your dashboard. It has a template that you can fill in the pieces that are specific to your course. And we would certainly encourage you to work with Doug if you have any questions on local rules that would be permissible for your particular course or event. And then on the pace of play side of things, just note that all coaches and administrators received an email with a form from Susie and I where they had to acknowledge that they have read the pace of play document and that they will adhere to the expectations both in regular season and postseason. So we need you to hold your golfers accountable to pace of play expectations. 6-hour rounds are not acceptable. They're not fun. They're not enjoyable. They're not what we want. And so we need to hold everyone accountable to that pace of play. And every coach in the state was asked to acknowledge that they have read the pace of play policy and they will follow it. So if you end up applying penalties with pace of play, they can't say that they didn't know. They have been told that we are expected to follow that document and adhere to it at all times. And remember that a verbal warning is part of that policy for the first offense. Second offense, your rules committee should get together and should determine did this group or did this individual do everything they could to catch up? And if they didn't, then we need to start applying penalties, because that will happen at the state meet if they do not meet that expectation. All right, next one. Coaches must be eligible to coach at the section and the state meet. Okay, so if you have a coach that is out there that did not finish their CERs, is not approved by the school, they cannot get a wristband. Okay, 2 wristbands for the team. If they have 3 individuals or more, they get 2 wristbands. In section tournaments, that typically means 2 for everybody, because it's very rare to have less than 3 individuals, but it does happen from time to time. So if that were the case, they would only get 1. As it relates to getting wristbands, you can go on Amazon and purchase wristbands for your section. We have a box, several boxes that we ordered at the league, and they were like a penny a piece. So they're very, very cheap, very easy to get. So go ahead and get them that way. Would recommend a different color by day and by gender if you have them at the same time, just so that you're monitoring who has wristbands, who should have wristbands and who shouldn't. So make sure that you get those wristbands in advance if you need those. And again, coaches need to have their CERs done. They're supposed to have it done before the first event, and we know that they don't do that, but they're supposed to do that. But make sure that they are eligible to coach before they receive a wristband. And any eligible coach on the team can get a wristband, up to 2, of course, per day. But let's say a team has 4 coaches that are eligible. If they want to do 2 coaches one day and the other 2 the second day, they can do that. So just know that that is allowed. But at a minimum, they need to have someone who is head coach certified on site, whether they coach or not. And that doesn't happen at the section tournament as much, but we do see that from time to time at state. So please let your coaches know, hey, if you're not going to be at state, but your athlete is going to be there, you need to make sure that a head coach certified person is going to be on site at the state tournament. We had to call an AD from a long ways away to get down to a tournament because the coach had a medical situation, was not able to be there, and we needed to have a head coach certified person on site. So make sure that they do know that that is the expectation. Next one. Okay, the MSHSL Golf app and iWanamaker, just a reminder, by board policy, this is required for postseason. The amount of participation we have with the golf app throughout the season is amazing. In fact, Minnesota has the second highest level of ticket sales in the country, and iWanamaker is in 20 some states now, and we have the second most ticket sales. So the interest level is there. Our grandparents, our parents, coaches, others do want to follow along, and they're very much interested in that. So we're very happy with the golf app. Doyle is very responsive, as is their staff. So if you need any help, have questions, please connect with iWanamaker. They will get back to you as soon as possible. As I mentioned earlier in this call, the section tournaments are already set up on the golf app and on iWanamaker, so you can go ahead and start working on your individual section tournaments and getting those set up. Okay, but just a reminder, it is required. The golf app use is not an option at the section and state tournament. It is required. So hopefully they're working on it in the regular season. Many schools are, and it's also a requirement for all state academic awards through the Coaches Association. It's required that the golf app is used for that as well. So just so you're aware of that expectation. Okay. Again, reach out to iWanamaker if you have questions as you're going through setup of your tournament, but it should be already in the app and on iWanamaker already. So you should be in good shape to get going with getting your tournament set up. Next. Talked about this earlier. Again, at the state tournament, in order to receive a golf cart, a person must be issued a disability parking certificate or license plate in Minnesota, and they have to be the person that's using the cart, and they have to have it on their person. Okay, we've heard everything. I rolled my ankle. Twisted my knee. I mean, I had a heart attack a week ago. All of those things we've heard. Sorry to hear that. However, the policy is that you need to have it on your person and you can't have an application out for one. And that's the expectation. At the section level, if you want to follow your own policy, you can, but just know that this is not the expectation at the state level. And in order for consistency and for less confusion, it's highly recommended that you follow the same policy at your section tournament. Next one. Okay, as it relates to breaking ties, we do break ties at the section level. That criteria is outlined in rules and policies as it relates to team. So you would follow the tiebreaker criteria for teams, and it's to determine you would only do a tiebreaker for team if you need to determine who is going to advance to the state tournament as a team. If you have two teams that are tied for third, you don't need to go through the tiebreaker criteria. We only need it if we need a team to advance to the state tournament. As it relates to individuals, same thing. We only need an individual tiebreaker if you need to break a tie to get an advancement to the state tournament. If you have two kids that are tied for second, you do not do a tiebreaker because they're both advancing. But if you have two kids that are tied for fifth, then yeah, you're going to have to do a tiebreaker in that case because we will need to know who is advancing to state and who is not. Please have a plan for tiebreaker that is clearly communicated to your golfers and your coaches before the tournament starts. Okay, so let them know, hey, if we have two kids that are tied and we need to do a playoff, then have that outlined and let them know, hey, we're going to play hole 18 again, and then hole 14, and then 18, or 9 and 18, or 1 and 18, or whatever you guys do. You need to communicate that this is the process, this is the holes we're going to play until a winner is determined. Don't make it up on the spot. That's frustrating for golfers and coaches when we don't have a plan relative to tiebreakers. But again, individuals, we will have a playoff. Team, we will follow the team tiebreaker criteria that's in rules and policies. And again, we only need tiebreakers in both cases if it is to determine who is qualifying for state and who is not. Next one. You should have trophies and medals and so on site. Work with your region secretary if you have questions on getting that taken care of, but you should have those on site. Have a plan for your award ceremony. We do have a script on site that we use for state. If you have an interest in that, you certainly can let Susie or I know, and we can get that to you if you would like to see that. Otherwise, have your own award plan and a script for what you're going to say in that particular ceremony. And then if you need duplicates of medals, so you have a number of ties, etc., or you need to get another one for an assistant coach or whatever it happens to be, knowing that at the state level, we do medals for the 6 team members and the head coach only. But if your section wants to do one for a 7th golfer or for an assistant, you can, but you need to go through the duplicate medal process. So work with your region secretary if you do need that. Next one. Okay, Laura talked about this a little bit on the updating results. Once your tournament is finished and you have finalized and closed the results on iWanamaker, please submit the results to our site. And you can get that downloaded off of iWanamaker. In many cases, iWanamaker will help us directly with that, but you should pull the results right off of there in a spreadsheet format and get that onto the league website. You should submit a team qualifier photo to photos@mshsl.org. The deadline to submit the photo is Tuesday, June 3rd. If you're in a section that plays on June 3rd, we would have you submit photos basically of all of your teams, and then we'll just use the one of the qualifier for both our program and for trophies at the state tournament. Other than that, just submit your winning team photo to that email address, and we will take it from there. As it relates to practice rounds, The reservation form was sent out by Susie yesterday. As soon as your tournament is completed, make sure that you get that information submitted on that form and work with the course to make sure that that's all squared away. This form is really easy to use. It's really clean. It outlines which section are in which chunks of time at the course. At this stage, we would ask that you do not, that your golfers, your coaches in particular, do not call the course and ask to be at a different time. Go in your sections allotted time. In the future, we're going to look at having, 7 to 1 and it just being wide open and allowing golfers to go in and submit their times, or coaches to put in for their times. At this point, it is a section assigned time, so you can let your sections know which section is theirs, and that is in the section manager's guide, and as well as the state tournament planning guide. It lists which sections are going to have which times for their practice times on Monday, June 9th. Practice rounds are not required. They do not have to do this, but if they would like to, they do have time set aside for them, and it's for the golfers only, not the coaches. Please let your coaches know in your section, hey, if you want to use the practice rounds, that's great. You're certainly welcome and encouraged to do so, and you have the opportunity to do that. However, if you put your name down for a round in the practice round schedule on Monday, June 9th, once you put your name in there, that school is on the hook for paying for the practice round. We have way too many coaches that call on Sunday and cancel the practice round. That's not fair to the course. That's not what we should be doing. So if you commit, you're paying for it. So make sure coaches in your section understand that if they commit to the practice round, then they are committing to paying for the round. Again, it's not required. So if they don't want to do it, fine. But if they do want to do it, they need to make sure that they communicate with the course through this form by indicating the times they want for their section during their assigned time. All right, next one. Okay, that's all I have, which was a lot, but appreciate all of you for taking the time to join us. Have a great section tournament. Reach out to Doug if you would like an MGA official on site, and he will work with you to try to secure one if that's possible for your date and location. Otherwise, stay in touch with Susie and I as you have needs leading up to the tournament. Any questions I need to address, or Matt or Susie?
Hey, I just want to address, I got 11 text messages during this meeting, so I just want to address 4 things for the collective group. Practice rounds. Your coaches cannot go do those practice rounds on Sundays. It's a question we get far too often of, can we move off of Monday and go to Sunday? Your kids can go play, but coaches cannot go coach them on that Sunday. So the dedicated day is the Monday. You're not required to use it, but please make sure that when you communicate your pre-tournament information, coaches cannot go be with their kids on the course on Sunday. That would be a violation of high school league policy by law. 2, Jay had talked about carts. With carts, yes, there are moments in time where the individual that is awarded that ADA handicap placard needs a driver. That would be the exception to where if Jay has the ADA qualification and I can drive for him, that's where somebody else can be in that cart. So just be cognizant of that. That's the policy we take at all 3 state tournament sites when we have to get yelled at each of the 2 days for what our policy is. So just sharing that with all of you. I want to make her, again, Jay talked about their expectation and requirement to use it. Who really loses out at the end of the day is not the kid who doesn't have the phone. It's the kid that individual is scoring for. So again, just try to really be clear with your messaging with the coaches within your respective sections. to really have kids be using it, because it's not the kid without the phone that loses it out. It's who they're supposed to be scoring for. And then last, if you do not get MGA officials from Doug, I highly, highly, highly encourage you. This was 5 of the text messages. Well ahead of your tournament, determine who your committee is that's going to address any rules pieces so that you're not isolated alone. Ideally, make sure that you have somebody representative of the club that you're holding your tournament at, and at least some representation of coach's voice in there, but ideally not the coach that would have a kid included in a rules question. That's all, Jay.
That's excellent point there at the end, Matt. I'm pretty sure, Susie, we put rules committee in there, and I'm not sure, I must have run right through that stop sign. Because I know we talked about it. So just again, if you have an MGA official on site, they would be part of that, that decision-making committee. If not, make sure that it's a site manager or administrator and not the coaches participating, as Matt was talking about. Just make sure that it's separate people so that if the decision needs to be made, and certainly include Doug in that communication as it relates to rules related items. Okay.
Jason,
And
I just,
on
go
the
ahead.
cart side of things, if the athlete has a accommodation to use a cart that Susie has sent on our league letterhead, they are certainly allowed to use that in the section tournament and at state if they qualify. But just know that we expect that a coach is the one that is driving the cart. Because of the advice rule, and that they have to be anyone who's within 25 yards of the golfers that's speaking to them has to have a wristband. That's why we need to have somebody that's driving the cart needs to be one of the eligible coaches. So just know that that's the expectation when it comes to that. We don't have a lot of those. I think we gave out, I don't know, half a dozen
Yep.
or so across the state. But just know that if you have one of those letterhead pieces related to the cart, that they are eligible to use that in the section tournament. So, and Susie, you had something?
Yeah, there was a couple questions in the chat to me about how do they know if coaches have met the requirements? And so I did check with Laura. At this time, the only people that can see everyone's coaches' requirements would be MSHSL staff. And, ADs have the ability to check their own. I'd be happy to run a CER report for a section, if there's anybody that's interested in that and share it with the section manager. So if that's something that you want to do to be able to check coaches' requirements, just shoot me an email and I can run a report right before your section tournament starts and send it back to you.
And another option, if you're not looking for you to do the extra work or for Susie to do the extra work, with officials, we make them take a screenshot of their eligibility dashboard and share it with schools and others directly. I think the same thing can be done here. You can ask your coaches in your section, hey, take a screenshot of your coach's dashboard and send it to me so I know that you're all squared away. That would really help us at state, because it's still amazing the number of people that we encounter at state that they look at me when they go, what's an online rules module? And after I pick myself up off the ground, I tell them, yeah, you're not coaching today and you shouldn't have been coaching all year long. So the more we can get this nipped at the section level, that is really going to help us at state, where we're going to see far less issues, because it's almost an impossible conversation to have with a coach when they just drove 4 hours to get all the way to the state tournament, only be told they can't coach because they weren't eligible to do so in the first place. And that's on the AD and that's on the coach, and I get all that. But if there's other, stop gaps that we can employ to try to help with that, that would be appreciated, I would say.
Jason, I think another thing that I could do to assist would be I always send a reminder out prior to state to ADs that says, hey, here's a deal, go look at your report. And I'd be willing to do that a little bit earlier and just include section/state so that maybe ADs are taking a peek at their coaches a little bit sooner.
Sure.
That
So
could
hopefully-
assist.
yeah, hopefully with all of us working together to try to take a peek at that will, really lessen the number of issues that, potentially could be there for you. It's just one more headache for you guys to deal with, and you have plenty already. We just don't need to add to the pile, and hopefully checking far in advance on eligibility of coaches that they're all set to go will lead to less challenges on the day of your event. So, anything else, Susie, that people are wondering about?
I don't think so.
Okay, we will get the slides posted and the recording posted so that you can review it if you need. Stay in touch with Susie and I with any needs you have, and Doug with MGA rules officials, and have a great section tournament. Thanks for your efforts. Appreciate you.